Nourish My Soul is proud to present to you another episode of Radicle Thursdays, where our youth are talking about the things that it takes to change the world and how young people are rising up all around the world to make those changes possible. This week is an interesting episode where our hosts, Bella and Kenya, are talking to their parents. This is a historic week where we have seen our very first female vice president, not just any female, a female of color, voted in to office, sworn into office. And they're having a conversation a little bit about politics and voting and what this new administration means for food justice and the work that they're passionate about. And also from their parents' perspective, what voting has meant to them, what politics has meant to them, and what they've seen in their lifetime. And I hope that this conversation sparks you to have similar conversations in your homes with your loved ones. I think it's important for us to normalize having civil discussions around politics and hearing people's perspectives and doing it out of love and compassion. And if we can get back to that place instead of making it a taboo topic, I think we are all capable of having those conversations. We just need to normalize it. So here they are, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to Radicle Thursdays, and happy first day of a new administration. We are recording this on Inauguration Day, about 8 hours after sitting President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been sworn into office. In this episode, we will discuss the experience of our first time voting and what that means, as well as looking at past administrations alongside the current one and how their policies impact Americans.
Well
This
said.
was a very informative episode, and I hope you enjoy.
As Kenya mentioned, we have our parents on today for this podcast. So, Mom, could you tell me a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So my name is Michelle Blanchard Vargas, and I grew up here in Massachusetts. And Bella actually was born in Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. So a lot of the time that Bella grew up was formed in D.C. and for the most of my professional life, I've been focused as a contractor for the U.S. government, supporting their public health program in infectious disease. We recently, in the last few years, moved to Connecticut, and I was allowed to continue working from our home office. And together with my daughters and my husband, we have a small hobby farm of dairy goats and poultry.
And what did you study in school?
In school. So I did go to school for Russian, and at the time it was actually Soviet studies. I went to undergrad and grad school and actually studied at university over in Moscow, and at the time it was called Leningrad, currently St. Petersburg. When I was your age, I was interested in international politics and was very impressed by all of the politicians, especially President Kennedy, and was really looking at an international diplomacy. And so that was my driving force for studying Russian and Soviet studies at the time.
All righty.
And since then, I actually became a little bit disillusioned in international politics, was really focused more on grassroots efforts, and that led me to the public health component of which I've based my professional career on.
Awesome. And Dad, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Well, my resume is nowhere near as political as Mrs. Blanchard Vargas, but that was pretty impressive. So I hope I can keep up. So my name is Ken Moning, and I'm Kenya's dad, of course, married to my wife, Rose, and we have 3 other children. I was born and raised in Connecticut and went to the University of Connecticut, go UConn Huskies. where I majored in finance, got an undergraduate degree there at UConn, and then while I was working, I got a master's degree as well from UConn, and I currently work for UBS. People often think I say UPS, the parcel company, but it's UBS, which is a Swiss bank. We're headquartered here in Hartford, Connecticut, the real estate division, where we handle commercial real estate properties. I work in the client services department and support one of our funds. Regarding political party, technically I'm registered as a Democrat, but I vote based upon the person more than I vote by the party. So that's my particular feeling on voting.
Oh yeah, Mom, did you say your political party?
I did not, but I have been a registered Democrat, and typically, when I was much younger, was much more liberal, and have become a lot more moderate as my years have gone by.
So you have experienced, right before we started recording, you both calculated how many presidencies you have experienced in your lifetime, and you have been around 10 presidencies. So can you both name one or two memorable presidencies, good or bad, and why they were memorable?
So I'll be happy to go first on this one. I would definitely say President Barack Obama in 2008, being a Black man, and for Barack Obama being the first Black president, that was absolutely historic. I think as a human, but certainly as an adult, there's very few things in life that I've experienced that I think have been historic. So that was an incredible experience to be able to vote for and to see President Obama become president. It was someone that truly looked like me at the time when I voted for him. I think, I still am, I guess, about 4 or 5 years younger than him, but, it was pretty close in age. So it really, something that really related to me to be able to vote for someone that I could relate to very well. And so that was so powerful experience that I wanted to go down and actually experience the inauguration. So our two sons we brought down to the event, and just was a remarkable experience. And I think his presidency really fulfilled my goals for his term in office. I thought that he did overall a very good job of keeping the country doing well. He came in just after our downturn in the economy, and he was able to bring it back together very well with some of his policies. So I was very pleased with that, and just really a very memorable time for me.
And you and I were talking last night about Obama, and I was asking kind of about JFK, and I had mentioned that Obama seems like a very personable, he seems like a very personable president. I feel like, I know for at least me, when I'm not too involved in politics, that just him being able to act like a human and not all high and mighty like some other presidents that we have had have acted is a very big factor in making a good president. So do you think that was also a factor for you, or kind of not really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's rare. I mean, the office of the president of the United States is, it's really high up there in the world. They say it's the most powerful position in the world, and to have someone that was very humble. If you think about many of the stories in politics, a lot of politicians do it for power and get themselves in trouble because they have so much power and think they can get away with things and what have you. And I didn't see many of those things in the lives of the Obamas. His wife as well, who was a mother and brought her young daughters into the office and make sure that they were being treated as teenagers, young ladies, and all that kind of stuff. It really was, like I said, very similar to my family. I really appreciated that about them, even though I'm sure they're doing very well financially, much more than I am. But at the same time, they did it very humbly. They took the job very seriously. They clearly were educated and did the job well. So it was, to me, that was definitely an easy vote beyond the fact that he was a Black president, just running for office. He seemed to be someone that really cared about the people, really talked a good talk, that seemed, he actually not only talked a good talk, but followed up his words. Integrity is very important for me, a person of integrity. So everything he said he would do, or most of the things he said he would do, he did, and made me feel comfortable. So that's why I definitely voted for him. I'm very excited for very pleased with his administration.
I'd have to echo a lot of Ken's comments. My first inauguration that I witnessed in person was President Clinton's. As I mentioned, we did live in DC, and although this was actually prior to Isabella being born, just the traditions that the inauguration demonstrates of the peaceful transition of power. It's an incredibly moving experience to be able to witness an inauguration, regardless of who is the elected president, because it is a peaceful process. And so it was just an amazing experience to be able to be there. But I'd echo Ken's comments about Barack Obama and just the humbleness. And I think that's a stark contrast from the behaviors that I observed over the last 4 years, focusing in on grassroots efforts and public health. Obviously, I'm drawn more to the policies that Barack Obama put in place that ended up being repealed or cut back, and I'm looking forward to the current administration's focus in on public health and the movement forward, and also the response to COVID-19, and recognizing that the current administration's already put forward some executive orders focused in on a COVID-19 response. So, but definitely looking at the behaviors and modeling for the rest of the country and for the youth that really takes their cues from the highest office and what is appropriate.
I have a small, not obsession. I don't spend my waking days. Appreciation. I have a large appreciation, there we go, for the Obamas. I have a few collectibles that I've gathered over the years in regards to them, like my bobblehead and calendar and what have you. But we've only been alive for 4 sitting presidents, apparently. Obama was probably the most memorable for at least most of our age group, because Bush, we were like little, so you don't really get much out of that. And he's not really memorable, to be honest, or at least personable, because he's just a white dude. Nothing really special about him. But Obama, younger guy, family oriented, did a lot of family events for the surrounding suburbs and DC people, which my youngest sister Sophia was able to participate in when he did the Girl Scout camping thing. But I don't know, he really connected to the youth in a lot of dreaming aspects, so that may be why.
Did Kenya and Bella, did you vote in this presidential election?
Oh yeah, of course I did. It's a big responsibility.
I did.
What was that experience like for you guys?
Very quick. I was surprised. I thought it was kind of underwhelming. I was hoping for a little more of a, not like a little firecracker type thing where they, pop the cannon when confetti comes out, but, a little something more than what it was. It was quite boring, but that's just me as a first-time voter. Now I know not to get my expectations high.
I think
mine was a little bit hectic. So I was voting in Pennsylvania and just trying to figure out, I kind of put it off getting my registration changed for me to be able to vote in Pennsylvania. So it was very last minute, me being approved, but I was able to vote in Pennsylvania, and they had a voting booth on campus. So I just walked down, voted. It was quick and easy. But yeah, I'm glad I did it. You know, it's my civic duty. It was definitely underwhelming, but it's kind of cool just thinking about how, I mean, it is only one vote, but just how like we do have at least some of a say in what happens in our country.
Do you find that a lot of your peers that have come of age and this was their first opportunity to vote, do you find that they actually took advantage of that and that were interested in the political process?
I
No.
haven't talked to that many. The ones that I have talked to have all voted, but they are also both like the people that I have talked to are very involved in politics. So I don't know about maybe some more neutral people like myself. Like I'm very neutral in politics for the
Yeah, you
most part.
nearly gave me a
So
heart attack up until you finally submitted it. I was on your tush about it like all the time. I was like, did you do it yet? And he kept
yeah,
telling me no, and I was getting so nervous there.
so I don't know about more. I don't know about people who were more neutral about it, but people that I know were very strong on both sides about voting definitely did for sure.
Yeah, I think we're also friends with, well, we have like one or two people that are like not very liberal that we're friends with. But the majority of our friends are a more liberal group, I would say. But that's because, I mean, most of our friends were in from the ground up with us, and activism in general is more liberal. But everyone understood pretty clearly the importance of voting. So most people did that we were friends with vote.
So
Right?
I appreciate the fact that you both felt that it was underwhelming. But this particular year, the election process was unique, I think. First of all, just because of COVID, what have you. But I wonder if you appreciate, number one, 2020 was the 100th year of women's suffrage, in that you had the right to vote for 100 years. And, you
Was it
know,
really?
yeah.
Did you tell me that,
Yeah.
Mom?
Yeah.
I don't remember. My mom made me dragged us out at like 6 a.m. to do it, so I don't
Okay.
remember half the things she
But so I
said.
think as women, as young women, you might want to reflect on that, even though it was an underwhelming experience. Um, you know, at one point in time, women didn't have the right to vote, and then as a Black person as well, uh, you know, it wasn't until the '60s that we had a chance to vote. So while the experience was underwhelming to you, it's very possible that a
We're
generation
taking
ago
it for
you wouldn't have had
granted.
the ability to vote. At least as a Black woman, you know, a person of color for that matter. And so, how would you have felt if all this was going on and you were able to place your vote? Would it still have been underwhelming?
Like if we were in the suffrage movement?
Yeah, yeah. If it was a point that for whatever reason the government said you do not have the right to vote. Yeah.
Policies were being made about you that affected you,
Well,
but you didn't have a voice in that government.
first and foremost, I would naturally have a small mental breakdown. Second off, I think I would have been probably out on the streets, so to say, with those the other suffragettes,
Suffragists.
I don't know, suffrages, because when we were little, my mother had instilled in us the privilege and the right to vote as women through Girl Scouts. Because of where we were located in DC, we had access to a lot of the resources and history regarding that movement. So we did a lot of field trips and kind of meetings surrounding that every year. So yeah, I think I would have probably been up in there.
The
You're
National
pretty
Suffragist,
strong-minded.
yeah, the
So
National
you made us.
Suffragist Museum is located in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And we did take some trips there to learn more about the movement, about the woman's right to vote, and some of the hardships and experiences that the woman had in order to receive that vote. Super important. Kenya, what was your experience in learning about the past and what it meant to you to be able to vote?
I would say I have a different perspective than most people. I would say I definitely take it for granted for sure being able to vote as a female and as a person of color for sure. I'm blessed to be in that position to take it for granted. I feel like I should think about it more, but honestly, I didn't think about it that much. It was just kind of like, okay, this is what I do. So it's amazing that we're in the we're in an era where I can just kind of go out and do it and go on with my day. But I think it definitely shows like the progression of our country. Like I don't necessarily have to worry about not being able to vote, but now I'm focusing more on movements that need to be happening now and like happening in the future. So I don't necessarily think about it like, oh, like directly with voting, but I think about it just kind of as overall like movements happening or overall progression. Yeah, just happening.
It's become more of an accepted right than something that you fought for at this point.
Right. So the mentality is, I would say the mentality is still the same as to me, like me looking towards other things that would be happening in the future. It's just not exclusive to voting because that's, while it pertains me, while it affects me, it doesn't necessarily affect me as strongly as I would say as things that would be happening in the future.
Like consciously, it doesn't affect you as much as
Right.
Would you say
when I was a student in the university, I went to Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York, and I was the president of an organization called Students Organized for Political Awareness that welcomed people from all political beliefs because it was our motto to be able to talk to one another with respect about all of our issues and all of our political spectrums. And in that process, we actually organized voter registrations to get students in Kenya. You didn't vote in Connecticut where your parents are, you voted where your university is based. And so that's what our effort was to go out and get people to be registered who were students who couldn't make it back home and to register with their school address. Did either of you find or experience that with any of your peers? Did anybody organize any voter registrations that got you to vote?
Claire and Camden, or I think it was just Camden actually. Yeah, it was Camden. Robertson in our senior year in the beginning, she wasn't an AP capstone gal. She was just a generic capstone where you just had to do, a small little project for half a year. And hers was surrounding in the beginning of the senior year voter registration. And so we got a little treat for registering to vote, walking 2 steps during study hall to the computer and doing it. So that's how I did it. I know she was the one that, well, I was going to do it anyway, but it was more convenient. What about you, Kenya? Did you also do it with her?
I initially registered to vote with her, but like on campus, I definitely saw it on campus. That's not how I did it. I just did it through just like the regular government page and just knowing that I needed to change my registration because I was previously registered. But I definitely saw on campus people who hadn't been registered previously used like the tables and use those tools to register to vote.
So there was a movement at the university you attended to get people to register?
Yeah, there were signs everywhere and tables set up like for 2 weeks beforehand everywhere all over campus.
And for those that participated at the high school level, when you initially registered, did a lot of the students take advantage of that, or feel that, to
I think
Ken's
so.
point, that it was something that you should do, that it's an honor to do?
Well, I don't know if it was with that thought process behind it, but a lot of people I know registered because Camden, I think, reported her numbers at the end, and it was like most of our grade, if not all, because some of them are a little younger than, the required age. But I think everyone registered on the surface level because, I mean, it's kind of big. Like, it's an election. It's just like another, like getting your driver's license kind of thing, kind of big, where it's just one of those things that you can say you have the ability to do so. I don't think people went into it with the mindset of it's a privilege, though.
So do you think that, sounds like both of you were very concerned about the previous administration. If it was a more relaxed administration, or you weren't really stressed over that, would you have felt the need to register to vote?
Yeah. My mom would have killed me. I don't know if I can say that. Maybe,
You already
okay,
said it.
non-serious kill me. She would have non-serious, not legit kill me if I didn't. Because then she'd be like, I instilled everything in you and you just did that. How dare you? She would have been so mad. Anyway.
I would say if the stakes weren't so high, I mean, I probably still would have voted, but the pressure to vote isn't that high in our house. It's just kind of like once you're 18, you kind of just do whatever you want. I still probably would have, but I think I just, like how Bella used the analogy of just getting your driver's license. I mean, it's just kind of the next step that you do. And I don't necessarily think about it as like a privilege, but just kind of the next thing that I do towards adulthood. And so when I drive,
a rite of passage.
Right. So when I have my driver's license, it's not, oh my gosh, I think about all this freedom I have. It's just kind of like, okay, I have my driver's license.
Yeah. But I feel like we're underwhelming.
Was it thrilling to have your driver's license?
I mean, it is, obviously. But I'm saying when I got my driver's license, I got it just because it's kind of like the next thing that you do. The next thing you can do is you can drive. But I didn't think about like the responsibility that would come with it or the freedom that I suddenly have. It's just kind of the next thing.
So I think to me that gives me a good analogy. So the fact that you have the freedom to drive, you were able to get a license and now have the freedom to drive. Could you not see a similar analogy for voting? The fact that you register to vote, now you have the freedom to vote. But if that was taken away from you, would you be upset about it? I would think if your license was taken away from you, you'd be pretty upset that you can't drive. You don't have the freedom again.
People lose their license.
I think the difference is the impact. Like if I don't have my license, it directly impacts my day-to-day life. If I don't have the freedom to vote, it does not directly impact my day-to-day life. As in,
yes, it
like, okay, hear me out.
We would not have rights right now if we did not vote. It would have.
I'm saying like within the 24-hour period, my life would not change that much if I couldn't vote.
Let me ask you this, Kenya. If you're one person, right? So you and Bella are both one individual each. Think about the movements that went on across the grassroots movements that went on across this country during this last election process and what happened in Georgia. And in several states, actually, where it came down to a small percentage in the recounts that happened. Your vote as an individual may seem like if I'm 1 in a million, I'm nothing. But that vote actually makes the difference of going in either direction and creating that balance of power. So when you look at places like Pennsylvania, when you look at places like Georgia and the movements, the grassroots, which both of you are very active in grassroots movements.
Absolutely.
So looking at but you're in food security, but looking over in political activism, those people that made the effort and got individuals that may not have been
That's
motivated
Stacey
to vote.
Abrams.
Yeah. Look at the difference. If those individuals didn't provide that activism in their communities, would those individuals have come to the polls to vote? Maybe they would have been more, it's a rite of passage. I don't really say my day to day. And would the inauguration today have had a different outcome? Would somebody else be sworn in today if people had that attitude of,
Because there's a cap. So when you recount after a certain amount, obviously the count stands. But if it's under the certain amount, even by just like a person, excuse my language, all hell breaks loose.
You had record numbers of people on both political parties come out, which was tremendous. I mean, I know a lot of individuals are focused in on the decisiveness of the two parties and the extremes of each of the two parties. But if you look and you can celebrate what actually happened was record numbers came out for both parties. And that's a celebration of democracy, people taking their right to vote and coming out in numbers that have never been seen before. And I think that is definitely something to celebrate.
Absolutely. And just to think, Kenya, I definitely understand your thought process there. And for instance, if you voted in Connecticut, it probably wouldn't have meant as much as it did by you voting in Pennsylvania. So your vote really, really counted.
I mean, that's why I wanted to vote in Pennsylvania, because Connecticut was going to be blue no matter what. And so, I mean, that's why I made the active choice to vote in Pennsylvania. I don't know. I'm just kind of nonchalant about, I would say, most things in life. Right. But,
I appreciate your nonchalant, because that's the millennial way of living, because you have it so good, especially like as a Granby resident for that matter, living in a middle class area, you have it good. But hopefully you'll sit back and think a little bit, because you certainly have heard your grandparents and certainly your grandmother tell you a number of stories of how it was when she was growing up. And literally, I don't know when they registered to vote, but they were certainly of age in the 50s and didn't have the right to vote until 64 or 65, voting Civil Rights Act. So although I seem to believe that they said they voted for Kennedy, so I'm not sure how that worked, but bottom line is, it wasn't long ago that you literally didn't have the right to vote because you're a person of color. So I want to make sure that you is impressed upon you that don't take it for granted, because not only was that your past, but it could potentially be your future, depending on who's in office and what policies and things are put in place. It could happen again.
Who's in the Supreme Court too.
Absolutely.
Would you say the desire or the urgency to vote for you, Kenya, would have increased had you been exposed to the suffragettes and all that jazz at a younger age and to a large extent? Were you? I don't know how the Granby curriculum was back then, but
it sounds like she had a wonderful education from her grandparents and her parents, though, about their own personal experiences with voting.
Yeah, well, clearly.
I would say definitely if it was more like I personally experienced it, for sure, more than just like me hearing about it 100%. But yeah, I realize I take it for granted, for sure. But yeah, if I had experienced it 100%, I definitely would be definitely more on top of it, or like I would think about it more actively. It wouldn't be just kind of like a passing thought. Okay,
being provided the education and the knowledge, or a simulation of sorts of the movement within the classroom, have been enough?
For me personally, probably not. For other people, it could.
Really? It really gets you into it, I feel like. At least it did for me. Get all
But I feel like
Wow.
that's one way that you and I are different for sure, though.
I guess.
So you're both youth activists focused on food insecurity. Today, there was a wonderful youth advocate that participated in the inauguration with Amanda Gorman. Did either of you have the opportunity to listen to her speak? Just listening to some of her words and relating it back to your experiences from the ground up and the work that you do. If I can just, and then to Ken's point of the right to vote, the privilege to vote, and what that really means based on your family history. Some of Amanda's words that she wrote and read today were, and yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a unit with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. What does that mean to both of you?
I was definitely zoning in for that part. So, I mean, she's right. A lot of people, especially right now with youth activism, a lot of times the difference between youth activism and maybe further down the line, I don't want to use make it sound like it's wine or something, but like matured activism. I don't know if that's a word that described it. When you're like older than 30, I feel like, although youth is a concept, I guess, but regardless, after the difference between youth activism up into your 30s and then after that is that youth activism, you act with a lot of urgency and blindness, I would say, especially our generation, because we grew up on a lot of dystopian novels where, worst case scenario, what could have happened had the Capitol actually been, the storming been successful, would have gone in place. You have this jaded, I guess, sense of what our democracy would or should look like, I guess. So in a lot of people's eyes, nothing is ever, you're trying to strive for perfect, and if you fall short from perfect, it's not enough. But I liked how she said, you're not trying to strive for perfect, and no one is, and you shouldn't be it should be in the back of your mind when in regards to activism, but it shouldn't be your end goal. Your end goal should be making those little steps to change as the times progress and to respond appropriately. You can't go from, being from the South in the Civil War, which almost happened again, repeat of history, what goes around comes around, to someone like ultra progressive like AOC or Bernie. That's just not how it works. And a lot of people get upset about that and don't want anything moderate and think, anything moderate or anything a little close to moderate is, atrocious. But reality is you should always be striving for small changes as the times progress, because the world is not perfect. We don't live in a utopia. We all need to wake up. That's my take.
Okay, Kenya, what does it mean to you to strive to forge a union with purpose?
That was one part that I really liked that she said. For me, it was, I don't know if I had mentioned this in an earlier podcast or if it was in another meeting, but it's just like doing what you have or doing what you can with what you have. So even though you may not have the biggest platform or the biggest circle, it's just making the impact that you can and striving with that goal in mind every day. And eventually you will reach your goal, or it will affect other people who can then affect other people. It'll be a ripple domino effect. Yeah.
Okay, now it's time for us to take back this interview because we've been getting grilled. And I caught on after like the third question you guys asked us, and I was like, alrighty. But then you guys just kept asking and, trying to be polite here. Let me ask you this. Can each of you say one overall thing that you guys are excited to see with this new administration? And what policies so far that you've read or you heard stand out that cause you or that are making you support this administration?
So obviously, with my background in public health, my first thought is the COVID response. Working in international public health and having an opportunity to travel to other countries and to look at their policies regarding public health and their responses to COVID-19. One of the things that I'm very excited about the new administration is the executive orders that that Biden has already put in place, and the work that he has promised to forge ahead. I'm aware that he's signed the executive order for the 100 days masking challenge, and has signed an executive order to rejoin the World Health Organization. It's extremely important. When we look at activism, you can also look at public health as being as part of activism. You know, health and disease, it doesn't have borders. And as people come and go across multiple countries, disease follows. It's just a natural progression of how our people move across the globe. And it doesn't matter where disease originates. It shouldn't be defined as a China virus. And so I just look at the rejoining of the World Health Organization and the recommitment to working with the rest of the countries in the world and fighting the COVID response, and also looking at the distribution of the vaccines. It's something I've worked in my career on, the therapeutics and the vaccine response from the US government. And one thing that I can see across different administrations in different countries is the distribution plan that we have for getting the vaccines to the people. Doesn't matter how many people work in the effort to develop a vaccine, to develop a therapeutic for those who have already been exposed, if we can't get it to the individuals. And his executive order and his promise to relook at the distribution plan, the centralized distribution plan, is extremely important to me right now. As we look at re-energizing the economy and everything, I think it all just stems right now from this COVID response.
So I'd say I'm excited about the diversity of the cabinet that President Biden has put in place. I do believe that it takes people from a variety of different backgrounds to do what is best for the country. And he seems to have found a number of people, hoping that they all do in fact get affirmed and that we don't have a whole lot of politics get in that place. But he's assigned people that are already leaders that have diverse backgrounds and can bring some new and creative ways to govern our country and hopefully look out on behalf of all of America, not just a certain few of America. I particularly am passionate about his drive toward racial justice. And I think, quite frankly, having a diverse cabinet is going to help with that as well. I've actually, 2020 was a tough year with COVID and everything and all the racial things, but I do believe that we've come to a moment in history that we can really make some change. Because we got some people that are people in the population that are interested in learning more. And I think having a president lead with the ability, interest of really doing something different, that we might really make some change happen with this administration. So those things there particularly are what I'm very excited about and hoping that we do actually see some progress.
Interesting to see the tall order that he's put in place for himself and all the things that he hopes to accomplish. Like you mentioned, his cabinet so far is incredibly impressive from what I've read and from what I've watched. He's putting people that have a very diverse background, but have specialties actually in the field that they are supposed to be talking about. He's put, per Dr. Jill Biden's request, an actual educator as a Secretary of Education. As she
From
said,
Connecticut.
yeah, from Connecticut of all places, as she wanted, because she wants educators to be treated as professionals and to be creating the change and not having to be told what needs to change. So that's really cool. Yeah, also his response plans to a lot of different epidemics going on, and from the opioid crisis to the pandemic itself to the racial epidemic that we have going on right now, is it's quite a tall order that he's put on himself and a burden. So I think it's important as his presidency goes on, a lot of things he will be able to do and do executive orders himself, but not everything he will be able to do by himself, and he'll need to get approval from Congress and the Senate. So it's important to note that you can't hold him up to the standard if he falls short on things because it won't get approved there. So there's lots of layers. Same thing was happened with Obama. There's a lot of things that he wasn't able to accomplish because he kept getting blocked. So despite the fact that they have the plans and they keep wanting and pushing to it in the public, not all the times it falls correctly or how they want it. And so just know that although they are the ultimate person in power, they don't have all the power to do it. As we
I think
move forward.
I think it's important to recognize, though, that when you look at the election results across the country, and you look at the different branches of government, it's very balanced at this point. And so you need that push and pull from all different political spectrums to work towards ensuring that all people are represented, right? That everybody has a vote. Everybody has a voice. It's not one party dominating and controlling the lives of everybody, but it's that push and pull between two parties or two ideologies that allow us to go not for a more perfect union, but for a union with purpose, right? And so it all pushes us to learn from one another.
Absolutely.
So Bella was looking at the food policies that have been posted on Biden's website. Bella, do you want to talk a little bit about
so as of right now, at least when we looked, the White House website has not fully transferred over and been updated to reflect all of his plans while he's in office, because just at this point, almost 8 hours ago, he just got confirmed into office. So what we were able to find was based off of his campaign website, rather. So this is what he said. I don't remember what tab it was under. Just go to plans. About in terms of food for our food incorporation, he focuses a lot more on production side of things, which actually impacts a lot more than we see or the general public sees. So I'm about to throw down some direct quotes on y'all. So the first quote that I found that he talks about agricultural systems, he plans to reinvest in land grant university agricultural research so that the public, not the private companies, own patents to agricultural advances. I'll do this by funding Sustainable Agricultural Research and Education Program and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. This will help farmers update technologies. It'll provide land back to the people and not make it such a private entity. It'll support a lot of smaller, mid-sized farms, essentially. He also wants to foster the development of regional food systems. So when you look at a lot of, well, it trickles down to climate change, or trickles up rather, I guess, because climate change is a broader umbrella. A lot of the things that can contribute to it in terms of the agricultural side of it is this mass production of food that we have in the States, and having it on such a countrywide scale is harmful to the environment. You're not getting, and for you, ultimately, because you're not getting the freshest food you can get. And so he wants to help foster the development, like I said, of regional food systems. So for us, it would be New England and probably more regionally, even further. So you're getting more ideal things. So he'll do this by partnering with small and mid-sized farmers to help them collectively create supply chains to deliver fresh produce and other products to schools, hospitals, and other major state and federal institutions, including the Defense Department. This will allow them to put the power back into their laps instead of these private corporations that often work these farmers dry of their money and into being broke. Yeah, it'll really help them and ultimately you, because we talked about, I don't remember if it was just on more of a group level for From the Ground Up or on this podcast of the importance and the strive to get farm to table type food in cafeterias to not only support local and regional economies, but to provide a fresher and more nutritious meal for the children within the school systems. And the last thing that I really saw in regards to food, let me take a deep breath there, was establishing a farmland trust, which would support new farmers and entrepreneurs and underrepresented low-income communities to find, purchase, and succeed on farmland. So that's really important when it comes to kind of stimulating the economy again and stimulating these local and regional food systems. Yeah, I mean, it really helps probably every aspect there. They would also help connect these farmers to marginalized communities locally and in urban and rural areas in an effort to develop and maintain a more diverse supply chain that provides entry points for aspiring entrepreneurs and food production industry. So, like it said, this is most important probably for regions that are severely poor or just generally are in food deserts or don't have as much access, whether that be in the Midwest or the Appalachias or in your districts and cities, whether DC or New York City or what have you. These local community gardens or farmlands for collective is really important for just everyone. And we talked about that a bit with Green Village Initiative in a earlier podcast. That's all
Yeah,
that I got.
I really appreciate how all of his at least food policies are focusing on kind of taking the power away from those big corporations and bringing them back to the farmers and where the food originates from. And he keeps saying, "I'm a president for all people. I'm a president for all people." And I think these policies are some of the ways that he's truly going to fulfill that or attempt to fulfill that. By not just continuing to fund these big like top tier organizations, but to really go back to the people that make up 90% of America and to really put his funds back into them and so that they can then reinvest in their own communities.
Right. And a lot of, you mentioned he continuously says that he doesn't care what party you are, he's there to serve you, as a president should in the first place be. That shouldn't have to be explained, but I think that's representative specifically in what we just I just talked about. You see, typically conservatives enjoy more localized governments, just systems in general, and this really helps support that helps bring the power back into those local systems rather than a more countrywide thing. So, it's a win-win for both Democrats and Republicans. Democrats for, breaking these big corporations down, which have way too much control and power, and for conservatives that want to stimulate the local economy. and better their neighborhood.
So we're going to the advice section. So can both of you give some advice for young people looking to understand more about politics?
This is my turn first. As we discussed in this call, this discussion, I think it is important to not take for granted your right to vote. Millions of people fought for that right and even died for that right. And just as a matter of honoring them, you should take the right. However, more importantly, for you and your family, life change happens because of your vote. Depends on who you vote in. And as I said, I've voted on both sides of the aisle. So I really vote more the person, what their agenda is, if I feel comfortable with that. I stick with it. If that's who I voted for, I stick with it. But at least you had an opportunity to voice your opinion. You really can't speak much if you haven't taken the time to vote. So that's my suggestion. And so in order for you to vote or to determine who to vote, you need to be educated, which means watching the news sometimes and reading papers, reading books, but understand what is behind people's agenda and help that to determine who you vote for so that hopefully they will in fact follow through on their word. That's my thought.
It was clear to me when you started talking about food policy that your passion came through. And, I think to Ken's point is finding your passion and letting that guide you through your own activism and allowing that activism to take you on to the voter booths. Learning what's important to you and how you want your world to be. And, when you looked at the poet today, Amanda Gorman, and she said, being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. And there's so much that has occurred in this country from the time it was born to the present. Some of them in more recent times that Ken mentioned with voter rights and for women and for people of color. We've touched on environment and food issues. There's quite a lot of things. And when you look at what issues are important to you, where we are as a country and where you as youth activists or youth who have the right to vote can leave your legacy, and that's how you will repair your world. What we've given you, we're passing on our world as we've matured to the youth and what you will leave to your children. And so finding that voice and making sure you always use it.
You're here.
Yeah, guys mentioned kind of looking back and kind of healing in a bit. Yeah, I think it's important to strive in your little niche activism field to heal the wound that has been created from the past or that has resurfaced. I think a lot of people, from what I've noticed from Twitter, are up in arms about Biden keeps saying, I'm here to, fight for the soul of the nation. I'm trying to heal the nation. A lot of people are mad that he's saying that because they think that's heal is a complicit term of just sweeping it under the rug of what's happened. But I think we should be consistently striving to heal and the wounds that have been created, so to say, within our nation. Some of those wounds have been patched up and are as good as new, like with women's rights to vote. Some of those are ongoing wounds that, heal a little and then may get a little inflamed, and you have to work on it again to counteract what's happening within the wound and with a positive effect. If anyone doesn't know how wounds get healed, that's how it works. You don't slap on a Band-Aid with the same problems and call it heal. That's not how that works. But just know that some wounds will probably, unfortunately, never completely heal. Ultimately, racism and xenophobia and all that jazz will always exist to some extent, which is sad to say, but the goal is to heal the majority of the wound, I would say, in whatever field of activism you choose to primarily partake in.
Healing the wound also means you have to look at what caused the pain, right? So and I think Biden spoke about that last night when he was honoring those that passed from COVID-19. We can't forget what brought us here. That has to be in our minds. We can't ignore history, whatever the wound was, whatever your issue was that brought you forward. It existed, and let us always remember and move forward and learn how to progress and to always shoot for, a union of purpose. I just love Amanda's words. I'm so impressed with the fact of how young, when you talked about maturity, Bella, this is a young woman, and just the concepts that she laid throughout her poem are just so mature for any audience, regardless of your background. And it's something I think we all should go back to and continue to reread as we think about what we can contribute and how we can help heal a nation.
What you three all mentioned was just kind of like a call to action. And Mrs. Blanchard Vargas keeps mentioning Amanda Gorman, who is the inspirational quote provider today. And so the quote it came from the very end of her poem. It says, "We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation. In every corner called our country, our people diverse and beautiful will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade aflame and unafraid. The new day, the new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." And so I really liked that quote, especially the very last two lines, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. And this whole quote in general just kind of is, once again, like a call to action. For me personally, that's how I interpreted it. But again, we kind of mentioned it before. You don't have to like be perfect or be a celebrity to make an impact. But if you are brave enough to believe that there is a better future ahead, just start working at it little by little, and eventually you will create a domino effect and there will be a wide scale change.
Yeah, I mean, it takes,
Well said.
yeah, definitely. It takes a lot of courage and bravery to not only recognize a problem if you're in a position where you the people that are influencing you are dismissing the problem, but it also takes a lot of courage and faith to see that there can be a better future and to have that desire in a way that creates change, no matter what size. So.
Okay, well, thank you both for coming on.
Parents special.
Yeah.
An inauguration special, since today today is the inauguration, or has been, was. Oh. Anyway, at this point, I'm here to promote our socials. As per usual, you can find us at our website, nourishmysoul.org, all under case, not score. You can find us on Facebook at Nourish My Soul. You can find us on Instagram, nourish.mysoul. Wait, no, nourish.my.soul. And you can find us at the teen group of Nourish My Soul called From the Ground Up, which is what we're speaking at. At From Ground Up, no O and from. And you can email us at Alicia, spelled ALICIA, @nourishmysoul.org. You can listen to us on YouTube. Just search up Nourish My Soul. Or on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Casts, or Radio Public. Search up Radicle Thursdays. Have a listen. Peace out, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, non-binary Scouts, everybody, aliens.
That was fun. Thank you for allowing us to interview you.
Right. You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you. Have a good night.